What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Hangout, where we help others move in excellence. And that lefty video's been getting some attention over the weekend, and I kind of figured that it would. But there's a little something for everybody on this channel. At least I like to think so. And a couple weeks ago, I had done a video asking a question. Is the government poisoning our illegal drug supply? And I was referring to fentanyl. And then historically, I looked at how the government dealt with prohibition of alcohol, and it was a dope video, a dope conversation. I'll link to it up there by the social media handles, and it kind of popped, and it's got 50 something thousand views, and there was a lot of comments, a lot of people sharing about their histories with addiction and their families and that sort of thing. So I wanted to kind of piggyback on that. I've talked about addiction and recovery before. It's been a while, and I know I got a lot of new subscribers, and so that's what this is. And it's also a way for me to kickstart or re-kickstart, I guess, Mental Health Mondays, which is a thing that originally I heard of from Incredible Javier, right? Cricket had a Mental Health Mondays when he was doing YouTube kind of regularly, during the pandemic. And then I had picked up, the mantle for that for a while, but I've never been real consistent with YouTube. I'm working on that in 2025, and so this is my way to restart that. So every Monday, tap in and there'll be a video, something around mental health. And if you guys got suggestions for topics or whatever, just leave it in the comments or shoot me an email, Joshua at thehomiehangout.com. Shoot me a DM on any social media and we'll figure it out. But so my story, right? And I'm not gonna make this a long video. There's a lot of layers to it, but I'm 47 years old. I'll be 48 in a few months. And I came up in an era and in an environment in San Francisco where the crack epidemic hit hard, and the effects of that were very visible to me at a young age. And so addiction was just a part of the fabric of my family, and learning more about my family, it actually goes back generations. But for me coming up, that's what I saw. There was all kinds of crackheads and knocks and dope fiends and call them what you want. And and so I learned from a young age, I don't want to be that. Whatever I'm gonna be, there's not gonna be that. And I seen addiction as a weakness. Like that's a character flaw. Something's wrong with that person. That they allow themselves to get to a place where they're not taking care of their kids, they're not taking care of themselves, they have no dignity, they have no nothing else. And so it's not that I had that language at the time, but that's sort of where my head was at. Like I said, from a young age. And so I partied, I did most, if not all the drugs that were kind of out there at various times in my life, but my addiction became gangbanging. I sold a little drugs. I was never some big time drug dealer, but I was addicted to being a homeboy and all that came with that. And so if you think about it in terms of, in recovery circles or in addiction, a lot of times it's talked about as a monkey on your back. And that monkey on my back of being a homeboy and being a gang member and being there for my friends and living that life was just too big and too strong. It really didn't allow much room for others to take a hold. And I'm thankful for that. And I love the addicts in my family, my mom in particular, but I loved all of them. I didn't hold them with a high respect, And so then I go to prison, right? 19, I catch a case for attempted murder. I go to the joint. And, as Northerners, back then, especially there was still the no hard drug use policy, but it wasn't always abided by. And in my first main line, I shot dope, right? I did a video about that. I'll link to it up there too. And it's weird because it was almost like shooting dope in my mind was a part of the prison experience, because most people I knew that had done time in the streets, most folks that had done time in prison were addicts, and a lot of them were playing with their elbow, right, sticking a needle in their arm. And I just thought that's kind of what came along with the territory. And it happened to be I landed on a yard, a level 3 yard where the leadership was strung out, and so I used there. Thankfully, it didn't get carried away, and when I left that prison, then that was it, right? Because even still, throughout my incarceration, Um, I was committed to this lifestyle, to this identity. I was striving, all that stuff, right? So there really wasn't room for me to be addicted. Then I come home from prison, and I'm doing community work, and I'm engaged in all this stuff and these different networks. And I actually found some recovery meetings that were dope. No pun intended, but that I really liked. And the thing I liked about them was there was no pretense of, oh, everybody in this room got their shit together, right? If everybody had their shit together, you wouldn't be sitting in here on a Friday night. So the transparency in those spaces and the vulnerability and the willingness to just share and be honest and build, community was really attractive to me and really helped me to stay on track. Even though I didn't have a history of a substance addiction, I did have an addiction to a lifestyle and a mindset. And and so I really liked those places. I would speak at recovery meetings throughout the Bay Area, and I never faked the funk, right? I would introduce myself, hey, this is Joshua. I'm a recovering jackass, or I'm a recovering knucklehead, if it was a Christian based recovery meeting. And some of them I didn't like, but there were a few in particular that really resonated with me. And so that helped me, right, throughout my journey coming home and just all the stuff I was learning and experiencing and trying to figure out as I learned what it is to be a man in society that's not going back to prison. Then I wind up, getting married and having kids and all that stuff. So fast forward, right, and I was able to do great things, man, with work and able to help people and hire people and wound up going back to college um, and then you go towards was like 2018, 2019, and my life takes a radical turn. All of a sudden, I'm getting a divorce, right? I'm kicked out the house. And keep in mind, I got married less than a year after coming home from prison to a woman that I didn't know before I caught my case, right? And then we went on to have 3 kids. So really all that I knew about being free and being in the streets all those years was tied to having that relationship, and so I'm not going to make this about that. That'll be another video maybe for another day. Um, but it fell apart, and I was lost. Like, they talk about midlife crisis and that kind of stuff. Man, I was shook. You know, I always liked to drink. Especially in my time home from prison. I always liked to drink, and yeah, there'd be some weekends where I had a little too much, and me and my ex would fight or whatever. I'm not an angry drunk or a violent drunk. I can get to be an emotional one sometimes. I'll get to that in a second, uh, but I'm generally kind of a fun guy, when I'm sipping, and so it wasn't that kind of fighting. But as we started having kids and whatnot, she sort of pulled back from the drinking, and me not so much. But it was always kept in check because I had responsibility. I was the main breadwinner. I I was, I was a role model for people. I was an example for people, and that accountability. I didn't want to be a hypocrite, so that really helped keep me in line. But a lot of that I lost when I moved from the Bay Area to Sacramento, because I wasn't doing community work then. I did work at the college. I started college programs and stuff, but it wasn't the same as working with young people. And so, anyways, we get divorced, right, or we separate. And at first, I'm stuck, right? I got no place to go. I'm kind of bouncing around. I wasn't seeing my kids as much in the very beginning because I was just trying to figure out where I was going to lay my head, right? Like it was all very sudden, and I didn't have as much responsibility, So I started drinking a little more, right? And then we stuff leveled out, and I wound up getting my kids. I had my kids most of the time, but now it's the pandemic, right? Pandemic kicks in, and so I had been a student. I had left UC Berkeley, right? I had dropped out of school. Uh, I wasn't working, right? I was a full time student before that, and I was doing legal work on the side. But now there wasn't so much legal work because the courts weren't even really in session. And so I drank. And if one drink is good, then 2 drinks is better. And I fell down a hole that I didn't even really see. A lot of times they say when you're starting to go crazy, you're the last one to figure it out. And and that was definitely the case. And I was just drowning in my emotions. I was feeling sorry for myself. I was feeling like I failed. I was mad at her. I was mad at the world. Look what you guys are making me do. Right. I got back into some very unhealthy behavior that I had stayed away from throughout all this time in prison. But next thing you know, I'm hustling this and that. Uh, and even when I had my kids, for the most part, there was a lot of drinking, right? And my kids were younger and they were cared for, they were fed, they were clothed, they got where they needed to be and that kind of stuff. And and I felt like I was a very present father. I was very accessible to them. I was very there, and I just like to have some drinks. But uh, that they had seen that before, right? We'd had big family parties where all the adults were drinking. So I didn't think it was a big deal, but I started drowning in that bottle. And as I was drinking to stay away to address what was happening in my current life, then all the past stuff comes up, right? And I realized later, but in the moment, not so much. But I I wasn't as healthy as I thought I was. I wasn't as emotionally and mentally and spiritually healthy as I thought. A lot of shit had been tucked away. I had a lot of baggage, man, a lot of wounds, a lot of trauma that I didn't address. That I hit the ground running when I came home, and I hit the ground running and helping other people. And so helping other people became a way to avoid really having to deal with myself. And now I'm stuck, right? The world is fucking shut down, and it's just me and this bottle, right? And my kids. And not proud of this, at all, but I got to drinking a lot. I drank so much I stopped drinking coffee in the morning, because there'd be a drink left over from the night before. And so leftover drink, we'll just have that and became a full blown fucking alcoholic, right? And the hustling thing happened. Like I said, I don't want to make this video too long, so I'll put that, in another spiel for the future. Folks on here know about it. This is all before YouTube, right? But the paperwork for me catching adult case and shit has been put out. It's not a secret or whatever. I'm a pretty transparent person. I call it how I see it, and I'm a pretty open book. So uh, I catch that case, right? It's a possession case. Um, my kids were upstairs sleeping in the apartment. I was downstairs. Not a shining moment as a father. And if not for the pandemic and that kind of, it could have gotten a lot worse, right? I should have gone to jail that day. If if it wasn't during that era, I would have. Thankfully, I didn't. Right, so I go to court. And I haven't been in trouble in so long. I was able to Prop 36 it, and not this new 2025 Prop 36 where people are going to prison for simple possession, but the kind where it's recovery based, treatment based, falls off your record type shit. So I was eligible for that. And that's what I did. Now I did that just to beat the case, right? Just it I didn't do that because I thought I had a problem drinking. And it didn't have anything to do with the drinking. It strictly had to do with me getting caught with powder and pills, right? And so I go to that first meeting, and it's outpatient, right? So I go to that first meeting and I'm drinking on the way, right? Had a little tall can in the car with me, pull up there. Everybody got to wear masks and stuff. And so I figured they can't smell it. And I'm listening to these people in this group, and since there's a new guy now, everybody has to share, their little kind of elevator pitch of who they are. And it was through Wellspace. If you're in the Sacramento area, you might be familiar with it. But so it was through Wellspace. So I'm sitting there and I'm listening, and a lot of the people were there for drinking stuff, right? They had gotten DUIs or whatever. And they're like, oh, I drink a fifth every night. I'm like, a fifth? I'm hearing these folks, and inside I'm like, damn, I could drink this whole room under the table on a boring ass Tuesday, right? And I don't mean that in a bragging sense, but like, damn, maybe if all these people have a problem drinking and I drink more than all of them combined, maybe I drink too much. And I really hadn't considered it, right? As foolish as it seems, I was in the midst of my addiction. So I'm not considering how this isn't working for me. To to piggyback off a point I started earlier though, I was drinking to escape my current reality. And in doing so, I brought up a lot of my past stuff. So I'm up in the middle of the night talking to dead people, and reliving things. and was just in an unhealthy. I wasn't happy. I wasn't in a great space. I didn't love drinking. I drank because I drank, but I hadn't tried to quit. And so I go to this meeting and I leave. And I'm like, man, maybe. And by now I'm in a new relationship, right? With my lady who I'm with now, who I've known since I was a teenager, right? Like this much healthier relationship. She knows me. Like it's dope. I really didn't think I'd ever be in a relationship after the divorce, um, but then this opportunity came along and I'm thankful for it. But so she's very supportive, she's very understanding. And one day I'm like, hey, I think I'm gonna pull back on the drinking. I'm gonna pull back. And I went and laid down. And I wound up in a hospital from the withdrawals of the drinking. My body started shutting down. And they sent me to the hospital. I told the story before, right? I go to the hospital, they put me in a room with somebody else. Um, I'm not feeling it, right? I'm like, look, I don't want a celly, single cell. They're like, this not jail. What are you talking about? So I make an issue out of it. I take the IVs out. I check myself out of the hospital. And my old lady comes and gets me. She's like, man, what the fuck you doing? I'm like, no, I don't. I'm fine. I'll be all right. And I go home and no, I don't. Probably didn't even last an hour, and the ambulance is taking me downstairs on a stretcher. Right. I wound up being in critical condition in the hospital for a week. My organs were shutting down. I had had pancreatitis a couple times before, um, but this nothing like this, and that's where me being diabetic comes from, right? That's where the diabetes comes from and the blood sugar issues come from. Is I was drowning myself in alcohol, and it wasn't a long period of time. I wasn't a wino for 20 years, right? But I was a hardcore wino for a few years, and it took its toll. And I have plenty of health issues already, so it did a number on me. And well space, I wound up missing my meeting. That supposed to go, I think, 2, 3 times a week. I missed it because I was in a fucking hospital. And my lady talks to my caseworker, and he's like, "Hey, we're gonna upgrade you from the base level that you're at, and we're gonna put you in intensive outpatient treatment, right?" And now there's a shift in focus. We're not talking about coke and pills. We're talking about alcohol, and really worked with me, right? And helped me. His name was Billy. Really worked with me and helped me. And so I keep taking these classes. I keep, doing this stuff. And I wind up working through things that I knew, things that I had helped other people work through, but I hadn't applied it to myself. Old curriculums and just all that. I had learned all that stuff. I knew all that stuff, but I hadn't internalized it for myself. And it helped, man. It helped. I stayed off alcohol, not ever since then, just to keep it real. But I stopped drinking for months, and there was some family custody stuff, and like there's other layers to this, right? That I'll get into later, but this video's already getting a little long. But um, I almost lost my kids right over the dope case. That didn't happen, of course. But then even talking to my kids, they were happier with me, not drinking. They saw more, and it impacted them more than what I thought that it did, And now it's interesting because I'm watching as their mom drinks incessantly, right? And so now I'm on the other side watching, and I'm like, damn, Um, but it even though I grew up thinking I was immune from addiction, and I had this intention of never being an addict, and I had flirted with drugs and come out of it unscathed, it was a perfect storm, and my life became unmanageable. And so there came a season sometime after where I was like, oh, I think I can just drink. Like that was just a season. Now that I'm not in that season, now that I'm in a healthy relationship and I'm stable and I have responsibilities and all this other stuff, now I'll be okay. And man, within like a week, I was fucking drinking constantly at the house. I was like, oh, here we go. It's you're heading back downhill. And so I have a toxic relationship with alcohol. Um, and the danger is it's at every store when you go in, right? I don't have to go in some alley and find somebody to serve me. I just go in the store, right, and just go to a restaurant. And so it is a challenge. It's a challenge that I accept, And, I haven't had a drink today. I didn't have a drink yesterday. I don't think I'm gonna have a drink tomorrow. Right. So it really is kind of one day at a time. And I just had to learn that even though I have a right to do something, it doesn't mean it's the right thing to do. You know? So anyways, just again a quick kind of overview of my experience with addiction and the healing that came from that. It brought up a lot of stuff. And in some sense, I'm thankful for that because it set my sights on things that I needed to work on. I wish it would have happened in another area, but it that perfect storm of kind of carpet being yanked out from underneath you in terms of this relationship and stability. And it wasn't the best relationship or the healthiest relationship, of course, right? But it was stable, it was normal. And when I got put into an unfamiliar place and I didn't have the tools, as much as I had the tools to help everybody else, I didn't know how to use those tools to help myself. And I think a lot of us are vulnerable to that. That my story is not a unique one by any stretch. And so there you have it. Man, help others move in excellence. That's what homies do. Help yourself at the same time because you're worth it. Help your community because they need you. And let me know what else you guys want to talk about, man. You guys take care.